Are we live?
Hey, everybody. Somebody do us a solid and let us know if you can hear us and see us. Because if people couldn't hear John Townsend yesterday, there is no hope for the rest of us. Let's see. Hello, Large Mac, Shady Homesteads, or Zorgulon. Can anybody hear us? Oh, sounds good. Great. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the first kind of live discussion Q&A that we've done. Thanks to Ryan over at Townsend's mentioning us the other day in his video about whiskey. We've actually gotten quite a bit more traction here. We've gotten a lot of new followers. How many?
We picked up over 200 followers in a week.
Yeah.
Townsend.
Yeah, and so we're in a little bit of a dry spell as far as producing Victorian barroom content because we're trying to wrap up the major absinthe documentary, which is it's going to be great, but it's a lot of work. We just got to take some time to focus on it. But we didn't want to leave everybody hanging out there with nothing new from us at all. So we thought this hangout would be a good idea. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got at least 3 or 5 folks in here with us. That's awesome. Pardon my not Victorian device here.
Yeah, you're on the set. On the set today. So for what we're drinking, we brought these.
Oh, it's our Zorgulon, so can't wait for the absinthe doc. Thank
you. Very good. Thank you.
We can't wait for that to be finished.
Yeah, it's been 6 years of discussing, 3 years of production. So we're ready to wrap it up. We're honing in on it.
And our friend Steve Abel says he's watching.
Steve is there.
Yeah, he can't comment.
Oh.
Have a great stream. Need to pour a cocktail. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
That's Steve from Musée de Vinoge.
The Colonel.
Also on YouTube.
So we can kick off something to drink today. If you follow the South Park City series, when we were out in Colorado last year, we visited South Park Brewing Company, which are fantastic. They not only make excellent beer, they also make excellent bourbon, which is not everybody, outside of this region can do. It's certainly not just a Kentucky thing. We've got some of the best bourbon in the world over on the Indiana side. But we brought these back with us. It's the Ranch Hand, easy drinking. It's not specifically based on a historic style, but they do recreate the beer that was produced there at South Park City in the brewery that still stands. So we brought these home. We've been saving them for a special occasion. It's been about a year. We fear we probably better go ahead and drink them before they go stale. So that's what we're starting with today.
Yeah, these are the last 2. We've just been hoarding them in the back of the fridge, and we finally realized, beer doesn't last forever. So it's time.
It was the most magical place, Fairplay, Colorado, South Park City. Literally, if the cost of living in that area was not prohibitive for people of our profession, we would have been looking at real estate before we even left.
Bartender's daughter. Fun fact about me. Cheers. So I don't think I've ever gotten to bring this up on the channel before, but I grew up in North Beach, this great old Italian neighborhood in San Francisco. And my parents worked in the bars out there, some of which did go all the way back to the Victorian era. They'd been local dive bars forever. And I was there in the 80s. And so my daycare, basically my mom would pick me up and I would hang out with her in Specs, this old neighborhood hole in the wall bar while she got the bar ready to open. And probably for the first hour or so they were open, yeah, it wasn't that big a deal. So I was taught to pour a beer when I was, knee high to a grasshopper. Some things you don't forget.
I came at this a little later than that. So.
Yeah, that whole thing about that Sweet Home Alabama, you have a baby in a bar. I was like, yeah, and I was that baby. I'm fine, thanks.
So do we have any questions?
We got 2 cheers. Oh, Frank McLeod. Hey, Frank.
Cheers.
And Musée de Vinoge.
Cheers, Musée de Vinoge. We'll be back there next week filming a big project. It's set in 1839, I think.
I believe, yes.
Which is right at the beginning of our period.
Oh, and Casey Ciccone says those Fair Play videos were great. Thanks for the content. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you. We really thought that going out there would be a one and done, but I think by the time we were on our way back, we wanted to go. By the time we were on our way back to Kentucky, we already wanted to go back. It's just a wonderful place.
It's so cool.
Yeah, the Snitching Lady Distillery is right there, right by the museum. Couldn't be a cooler place. We are hoarding the last drops of the spirits that we brought back from the snitch, guarding those jealously.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just started chatting and rolling, and we had the bar set up also because we were filming some more commentary for that documentary. So sorry if we're a little high energy, just like, hey, we just made it in time before it was 4:01. We went live.
Yeah. So that was hopefully the last, maybe the last interview we do for that one. I might have one more I want to throw in. But...
And Josh is here. He says howdy and cheers. Hey, Josh.
Cheers, Josh. Howdy.
That's one of our good buddies.
Yep.
So I think we should ask these folks a question. What are other people drinking? This wasn't just supposed to be us running our mouths.
I know somebody's got a Pepsi and Coke or Pepsi and rum out there. We're in a camper.
Yeah, somebody's watching us on their camping
that's
trip.
Awesome.
Or they're fighting with their Wi-Fi on their camping trip. In which case, that's fine. Go be in nature. Let's see. Josh, what are you drinking?
We know you're drinking something. Josh.
Yeah, we know Josh is drinking something. We say that with love. Shady Hill, Large Mac. Frank says he's working today, so just coffee for him. Understand, Frank. Good for you. Josh is gonna pop the tops off some Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Ale, Irish Red, in just a few.
Excellent. That's good stuff.
That is really good stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Large Mac says that's me. I'm going to assume that's the Pepsi and Coke.
That's right.
Camper.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Where are you, by the way? If you're out in a camper, we're beyond flattered you would tune in for our live stream.
Oh, Zergulon's having Spanish vermouth later. Excellent.
Oh, right. You can read text that far away.
Barely. If you read on there, it's probably more efficient. Yeah.
I don't have the Victorian glasses yet. I finally had to break down and get the modern glasses. So Victorian frames will follow. Steve says he still has some of the Snitching Lady rye.
Oh, excellent.
We'll bring some to the shoot on Thursday. He's sewing, so no imbibing till later. Steve Abel, for anybody who does not know, is probably the premier tailor.
As far as historic tailor, like
for 19th century,
1800, 1850 at least.
Yeah.
He tends to cut off at the Civil War. I guess there's plenty of people doing that, but that whole first half of the 19th century, you can't get better than the work he does. He's done amazing museum pieces. He is the go-to guy for museums for that period where they need very specific stuff recreated. If you Google Steve Abel, you'll find news articles about him and everything, and see some of the neat stuff he's done. Yeah,
we for years didn't think we'd ever be cool enough to know Steve Abel, and now we're constantly texting each other pictures of our cocktails, and we get to work on stuff together over on the Musée de Vinoge YouTube channel. So that's great. Let's see what else we have going on here. We got, Donna says too early, still have editing to do. Yeah, don't drink and edit. Later. Later she's going to have a Manhattan with the 1792.
I tell you, when I'm editing a Victorian barroom episode, I can only get so far of listening to myself talk about a drink over and over and over before I just need to go ahead and knock one back.
Yeah, that's true. That eventually that happens. Yeah. When we're shooting Victorian barroom episodes, it actually works out really well because we usually go through the drink twice.
We only have one camera.
Yeah, so we do a back up and close up, and I'm mostly behind the camera. So by the time he's finished the first drink, and I'm really ready for a drink, I'm like, okay, I'll just dispose of that. Let's see. Diet Doc, 7-Up and gin. Very good. Actually, we have some gin we want to show off in a little bit. Yeah, very good. Large Mac says Cat and Iowa. Oh my gosh, wow. So you're on the road. That's so nice.
Nice.
Jealous. Heritage Village is here. Oh my gosh. Hey, you all.
Heritage Village is a historic site in Sharonville, Ohio. It's right outside of Cincinnati. And what Sharon Woods Park is a bigger thing. And what they've been doing there since I think at least the 70s. They've been bringing buildings from around that area from the 19th century that were threatened with destruction, arranging them along a path and restoring them. And it is. And my parents taking me there probably around the age of 10 or 11 was one of the things that transformed history in my mind to what it is and really set me on my path. So we just got to do, a couple weeks ago, we got to do an in-person Victorian barroom event with those guys. We did 4 drinks, different drink. It was like, and they were in 4 different locations in the village. And it's like I don't know, it's like my historical Mecca or something, you know, it's this pilgrimage for me. I feel like I've gone back to the beginning. So that was a real privilege for Steve Preston, the executive director out there, and his staff, Bethany and Lauren, who had the vision to bring, to actually make the Victorian barroom happen in that setting. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think my favorite thing about that is because you are always talking about the evolution of those drinks. So you were actually able, and I was there too, we were able to go through, like, because they have buildings from different decades from the 19th century.
The whole expanse of the century.
So we were really, it was very consciously moving through time. And you're always talking about how the impact the railroads had on everything about everyday life, but how we see that in drinks.
Yeah.
And you got to drive that home in a railroad station.
In an actual 1870s railway station, the Chester Park Railway Station. So that was really neat. We were talking about the impact that the railroad had on beverages in a railway station from the day. So
yeah, that was so cool. So Heritage Village, by the way, they're in the chat. They also have a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And you can learn more about their buildings if that sounds interesting.
And keep up with what they're doing, because I know they have some really neat ideas for some events that are coming up. Steve has become the executive director within the past year or two.
Yeah.
And he was the education director for a long time. And so he is deeply immersed in the place and has some really great ideas that he wants to bring to light now that he's kind of at the helm. And I'm really excited to see what they come up with.
Apparently it's Lauren in the chat today,
hey, Lauren.
And they want to bring us back.
That'd be great. We would love it.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And it's so nice there. It's so shady. It's so pleasant.
Yeah.
Casey says Boulevardier is their favorite cocktail.
Oh, okay.
Making one tonight for sure. I know that cocktail. Have we had one?
We have. That has Campari in it, right? It's been a while.
Did I like it? I
believe you did.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I don't always remember.
Yeah.
They'll be like, we drank that. I completely believe you. 100%.
Well, we started exploring mixology in the classic era. But naturally, we're more naturally inclined to the Victorian period, and so that cropped up eventually. And I think the reason why we never did a classic cocktail show was just because we figured nobody was going to watch me make the 15.
Everybody can go watch How to Drink. It's great.
Yeah, episode about Manhattan. So
Greg has that market cornered. No, but this was something really different. Like when we started going into the pre-classic. And I'm always saying pre-prohibition, and you're always correcting me that it really had changed before that.
Exactly, because the trend started popping up in the 1890s, and the early 20th century popped up. It just happens that prohibition's the headline.
Right.
Do we want to answer our question?
Rum also, Large Mac also says rum treats them good, which you got to know those things. And rum is something I feel like we haven't done enough with.
We haven't. Let me go get one real quick.
Good. Fun story about us actually. So if anyone hadn't noticed, we're married. I think we announced that on the Townsend's live stream actually.
I think so.
Yeah, because we got married during COVID and we didn't tell anybody because we kept pretending we were going to have a real big wedding until we finally realized that our $50 at the courthouse wedding was the greatest present of all. Not having to throw a big party. So great. But if you go back in time to 2012, a little over a year ago, I was living in San Francisco. He was living in Louisville. And
10 years ago.
10 years ago. Did I say 20?
You said a year. I'm like 11.
No, it was a decade ago. It was a decade, not a year. We first got to know each other over Skype, RIP Skype. And we were making mixed drinks across the country together. We go out and buy the ingredients. So we would go home and try them together. And at that point we were doing the classic era because that's where everybody starts. Yeah. So you start in the classic era. It's classic for a reason, but I think it was a few years into you being at Locust Grove and we'd figured out period cooking, right? Okay, we found the food recipes and you started being like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, it's like I'd heard people say, "Oh, it's so obscure, you can't understand these recipes, yada yada yada." And of course, it's all crap. Just like anytime people say you can't figure it out, and we for some reason I picked up a copy of Jerry Thomas and started digging into it, and it was same as interpreting any other recipe. Now, did we make some mistakes along the way? Yeah. Yes. Was it still fun? Yes, because we were having cocktails. So.
Yeah, there's drinks that we started with that now we go back and it's like, oh, that's how we were supposed to do that. Great.
I wanted for rum. These are two of my favorites for Victorian mixology these days. Appleton Estate is probably one of the most accessible. It is an actual Jamaica rum. It has just enough of that pot distilled funk that they call hogo, that it plays well. It complements the cocktail without overtaking it, which plantation rum is a work of art, but if you're not careful with it, it'll overshadow all the other ingredients. But it is a work of art. It's a real Jamaica rum. And then, of course, this is a little harder to find, but Spirits of French Lick, Stamper's Creek, American rum, very good. Yeah, this has the same kind of quality, great for Victorian drinks.
That's the best one, I think, when you do the Joe Reddick. Yeah. Casey says for the Boulevardier, it's Campari, sweet vermouth, and rye, which of course I like that.
Yeah.
Sir Zorgulon has a fantastic question, which, by the way, Sir Zorgulon, thank you.
You are one of our most loyal
we
viewers.
love your comments.
Yeah, we love seeing you've tuned in the morning. Like, I think you can usually see it in the morning before we get up, and it's always just great to see your comments on there.
It's so great. We're always like, the support, we're such a small channel. Like, y'all, it really, trust me, it's feeding our souls.
What does it say?
Send us a heart. If you weren't the Victorian barroom, which other time period would your channel cover? That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. And I've said this in different contexts before, I think, but for those of us who are drawn to a specific point in time, that's just how it is. And I probably told this story a million times. Stop me if it's getting tiresome. But I started out as a Revolutionary War reenactor because those were the people I knew. That's what I got involved with. And I met some of my best friends to this day in that. And I'm not done. I'll still be back doing that. But I always had this draw to the Victorian period. And I understood it a little better when I was hanging out one night, hanging with my buddy Kyle Williard, who's one of the best swordsmiths in the world. And his pewterware, his tableware is in the John Adams miniseries. But we were just hanging out talking, and he said to me, he's like, yeah, this Revolutionary War stuff is good, but the 1760s is where I really feel at home. And that was a light bulb. I was like, wait, we are all zeroed into to a certain point in time. So I don't know if there is another time I would do, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, nothing is going to feel as right. Mm-hmm. And I think the nice thing about the Victorian period, too, is that is so long that, minimally, that is 37 to 1901. Mm-hmm. So we even within that, we get to have our favorite decades, or we get to have, other decades that maybe we've overlooked that we get into. And then, you can even stretch it longer and say, okay, the long 19th century, it's a very academic term. The long 19th is 1789 to 1914. And I think that's definitely my interest. I actually have always been very interested in World War I for a lot of reasons, but it boils down to, in so many ways, you just very seldom see so much change so fast. And in a lot of ways, it's still a very Victorian-ish world until that war. So that is interesting to me. But I think by being Victorians, we get so much, Well,
and for me too, it's just where I feel comfortable. So it's not, I don't stop Victorianing. I wear these same clothes to work every day. That's just what I do. So for me, it's where I feel comfortable, and I'm just not inclined to be anywhere else.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
I'm going to keep answering that, but then I think you just probably skirted over one of the biggest questions you always get about everything.
What's that?
Do you dress like that every day?
Yes.
Yeah. Also, before I moved out here, I did what I will call Tudor reenacting, which in reality, I was at a lot of Renaissance fairs, but I promised the group I was with, the Guild of St. George, we were working really hard to do a very informed Tudor court impression, which I just loved. So I don't know if that's not the time period that I really always go to, but I will always have a place in my heart for Elizabethan and Tudor. I will say that's a really, really interesting world. And in fact, to me, one of the most interesting historical artifacts I've ever seen was, if you're familiar with the wreck of the Mary Rose, it was a Tudor ship that sank. And there's still a very interesting argument going on about whether it sank on its own, or it was either the French or the Spanish. The French sank it. And I think the British would rather say they sank their own dang ship than that any other enemy sank it. but it was dug up, and it was one of those situations where a lot of it was in that anaerobic mud. And anyhow, you can see some of the artifacts online. The wreck of the Mary Rose. Look it up; it's amazing. And you want an alien world? One of the artifacts on that is an ear scoop that is more beautifully and ornately carved than any object I use on a daily basis. And I look at that and I'm like, this is a different world. This is a thing that was actually designed to take wax out of your ear.
That goes back to the Middle Ages.
And somebody took the time to make it intricately gorgeous. And I'm like, that fascinates me. So I would say I have a place in my heart for the Tudor and Elizabethan very much. But for the most part, yeah, we love the Victorian period. Gosh, what a great question.
Yeah. Hope that was a satisfactory answer.
Oh, Sir Zorgelon says the Mary Rose was too damn good a ship and Poseidon was jealous. That's right.
That's awesome.
All the female monarchs. That's right.
There is something about that when they come to the throne in England.
Oh, Large Mac is going to Key West in October to go rum shopping, and we are jealous.
I believe it's Key West. There is a guy doing an excellent absinthe down there called Death in the Afternoon. Mm-hmm. Alan Bishop developed a recipe. I'm forgetting who distilled it up here, but you can get it down there. Not a lot of other places. It's an amazing absinthe. I've had it.
Sir Zorgelon says you got to come over to the UK sometime. You can visit the preserved wreck. I got to go to the UK in 2010 on a 5-week trip. After my father passed away, he left me some money and said, travel, go. You're not allowed to save it. You have to go travel. And I got the rail pass. And I think at that time they were still prepping the Mary Rose. I didn't get to go. And I think they were still like soaking it in the glycolate?
Polyethylene glycol.
Polyethylene glycol. We're nerds in this house. But gosh, I got to see so many amazing things and drink so much good beer. That was a beer trip.
We really do want to get to the UK.
And
that's the other thing for me is that, first of all, being drawn to the Victorian period specifically, I'm also really just drawn to the United States and British Isles. I don't really have the urge to see anywhere else, to tell you the truth. It's just that's where my heart is. In both.
Ich will nach Deutschland fahren.
I mean, I think Germany would be beautiful. Yes, but
apologies for the way I speak German. I want to go to Germany and see all the castles.
Now, we had a question before we got on from Bram Stoker.
We had it in a second. Musée de Vinoge also wants to know why your beer is gone and mine isn't.
I drink faster.
Yes, because I learned long ago that I just need to acknowledge that I should not even try to keep pace with my husband, and it's fine.
When me and Josh get together, we can keep pace.
Yes, they can. Should I say that thing about Ryan?
What's that?
Should I tell them about Ryan?
No.
Okay. In joke. No, I won't.
Okay, I'll say it. No, Ryan Kerr drank me under the table. Serious respect for that.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't tell that about our friends. But,
he is an awesome guy. I miss those guys so much, and we had a good time together when we were up there. It was
Yeah. This isn't even a question. We'll get to those questions. But by the way, I will take any excuse to point this out for anybody who watches Townsend's, and obviously most of you do. I know it feels like those people look too nice and like no one can actually be that nice, but I swear they are.
They are.
They're like actually that nice.
Yeah.
They're super professional too to work with. Like just no drama, no ego.
They're just good folks.
They roll in like, let's get this project done. Let's go. But like not in a crazy way. Mm-hmm. They're just, I always feel like I need to spread that message because like no one can be as nice as John looks, but like they are.
Because we were nervous the first day they were showing up when we were at Locust Grove. It's like, oh come on, they can't really be that cool. And they were. Walter Stave is too from Tasting History.
Yeah, I didn't get to work with him. You did.
Yeah, he was at Locust Grove when we were as well. And Walter Stave is he's probably even cooler off camera than he is on camera.
Yeah.
So what about do we have?
Okay. So B Stoker, one of our regular viewers, had a question. And it was drinks. Let me pull it up. I think it was drinks from the Victorian period.
What
that are still around now that we like. Top three.
Top three. That we like that are still around now. Is that the question?
I think that was it. Okay. Don't make me try to navigate.
No. Well, the most challenging thing about that was to think about what can I qualify as what was around then that's still around now, because especially with the catastrophes of the 2 world wars and the American Prohibition. Those changed so much fundamentally right down to the agriculture. that was going on. So it's hard to say sometimes what hasn't changed, but I think I came up with 3 good answers.
Yeah.
And one might not be what you're looking for, but it's champagne.
Heck yeah. So this is answering B. Stoker top 3 drinks from the Victorian period that are still around today.
Right. And champagne was wildly popular during the Victorian period, especially at the end of the Victorian period. And you recently uncovered the detail that our taste is in line with the British taste at the end of the.
Keep talking because of
So apparently, a lot of it was sweet. They really did prefer the sweet thing. But in England, it was kind of tending towards the dry side, which we really like a brut. If there's a semi-special occasion, not really, or we just feel like it. I mean, we just like champagne around here. And she's going to get a book, I think. Number 2, I'll just go ahead and touch on while she's looking for that, is absinthe. Just regular prepared absinthe. And I've got one here, St. George. And the reason why this is probably a little less altered, there's some technicalities about the way it is in the United States, and maybe I'll get into that in a minute, but we were deprived of it for over a century, about a century, because of lies and politics. And so in the 90s, it started coming back. And so just now, and people aren't sharing their secrets. And so in the United States, there was a big learning curve to getting back to absinthe. But now we have this window into the Victorian period that people just didn't have unless you were going off into the hills of Switzerland and getting like some moonshine out there. So just regular prepared absinthe. This is something that's come back to us from the Victorian period.
Frank McLeod says that's his. They make his favorite gin.
Everything they make is fantastic. This is the St. George Distillery it's in California.
Hometown hero.
Yeah, where is?
I am from San Francisco, so
Alameda. Yeah. All their gins are fantastic. Their absinthe is fantastic. And one thing that we found during the absinthe documentary we're filming, this has the most beautiful louche of anything you can get for a reasonable price point.
Yeah, we tested it.
This shows up really good on camera. So, what are you going to say about the?
I could not find that book. I think I made the mistake of putting it away, so now I don't know where it is.
But go ahead and say.
I read this really interesting biography recently about the widow Clicquot, which I don't speak French, so I did not realize that Veuve Clicquot is the widow Clicquot. Yes, we love Veuve Clicquot on the very rare occasions we spring for it. I think we had some when we got married. It was so interesting. And I think the book's just called The Widow or something like that. And you can find it on Amazon. But it was such a great book. And I ordered a copy finally to own. I think it was $10, $15 on Amazon. And I found it just browsing the stacks in my local library.
We're talking about the British trend.
Oh, anyways, delightful book, fascinating woman. But yeah, it was really helped me understand how wine was made. And it talked very much about how the Russian market for wine, and especially champagne, was extremely sweet in the 19th century. But the British market was always a little drier, a little less sweet. And if you go back to the early 19th century, and she was trying to sell this stuff during the Napoleonic Wars and dealing with the embargoes and all this stuff, I mean, all of it was probably sweeter than we could stomach. It was even what we call dessert wine or table wine or dessert wine today, it would be way too sweet for us. But apparently the Russian market just wanted it sweet. And the British always kind of backed off on that. And then we already knew through the 19th century, it also generally got less sweet and drier. So we figured we just have a little more of a British taste for champagne. And I think by the end of the 19th century, like the kind of brut that we like to drink would be recognizable. Yes. Yeah, we just like it drier.
So number 3 for Bram Stoker's question, as far as favorite Victorian drinks that are still the same day, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty with this one. And I'm going to say the whiskey cocktail, not because it's usually still prepared the same way, but because the Victorian whiskey cocktail, going back to Jerry Thomas's thing, and David Wandrich points this out, and it clicked a few things in my head. The basic whiskey cocktail is the basis for the Sazerac and the Manhattan. And I could drink, if I never had another cocktail other than a Sazerac and a Manhattan, I'd be a happy man. And so I will show you what I mean right now. Is Steve still here?
He'd have to text us and tell
Okay,
us.
I might irritate Steve with this, Steve Abel, because Steve makes the best Sazeracs around, okay? I'm going to do a couple of subtle tweaks to Jerry Thomas's 1862 whiskey cocktail. First of all, absinthe was in his manual, so it was already on the scene, even though the phylloxera had not taken out the wine crop yet. So it wasn't a big thing yet, but he was using absinthe. He does not call to rinse the glass in absinthe, but I'm going to do that the way you would in a Sazerac. Okay, so our glass is rinsed. Alan Bishop made this beautiful copper mug.
Yeah, that's the same guy who made that Stampers Creek rum, and the same guy we're always talking about. Steve says, I will be making a Sazerac for you two after wrap on Thursday.
That is awesome.
So this whole thing with
he does the best Sazeracs.
Yeah. Just be like, Steve.
So in a shaker, we're going to take our gum syrup. You've probably heard me say it before. Liber and Company makes an excellent gum syrup. You can also make it at home. This was the typical syrup that was used in Victorian cocktails. In a traditional Sazerac, they're using a sugar cube, but this factor that Jerry Thomas was using serves a similar purpose. It's 3 to 4 dashes. Unfortunately, the modern dashers I've got, this is too thick to pass through. So we're going to do a scant half teaspoon. Come out about the same. And then he has 2 dashes of Boker's bitters, which was very popular at the time. And what we're going to do to get this a little closer to the Sazerac is we're just going to do a couple of dashes of Peychaud's bitters. So that is the classic Sazerac bitter. Okay.
Hey, Shady Hill. I think Shady Hill has to run, but they said thank you so much.
Thank you, Shady Hill. Thank you for being here. And then 2 ounces of whiskey. He doesn't specify what whiskey. We happen to have some Sazerac. We've had some good fortune lately. It's a good old rye whiskey. Of course, the difference here too is in a real Sazerac, the bitters and the sugar cube go into the glass first. In the whiskey cocktail, we're just kind of doing it all together. Can I have some of that ice? Thank you. And put a little ice in there. And stir it to chill it down. I really like a shaken cocktail, but with these, shaking it will really brutalize it.
So there really is a difference.
There is a difference, yeah. And it just depends on what it is you're making. And it's kind of like when somebody tries to say, no, you always want to reply to the sender. No, you always want to reply all. No, it depends on the situation. This really does need to be stirred, not shaken.
It's my pet peeve. That's why he's like, I've ranted it so many times. But we'll just leave that in the 21st century.
Okay, we are going to stream it into our absinthe rinse tumbler.
Yeah, and if I wasn't married to you, if I hadn't gone down this rabbit hole with you, I would probably be thinking like, oh, shaken or stirred, does it matter? I probably would never have keyed in on that, and I wouldn't have tried the difference, so I wouldn't understand.
One of the things I love shaking a cocktail.
Yeah,
and so with some of these that it's said to stir, I did shake. But then when I compared the two, it's like when they really say to stir, it does brutalize it. We're going to squeeze a lemon peel over the top. On a Sazerac, usually this would be left on. One thing I like to do with these, since we're not doing a true version of it, I like to just let the essence settle over the top and get rid of it. So the person drinking it isn't even necessarily seeing where the flavor is coming from. They're just greeted with a waft of citrus.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. The absinthe and the lemon play really well.
So here is our Sazerac version of the 1862 whiskey cocktail.
So what are we counting that as on the list for B Stoker?
Number 3.
What are we calling it? A whiskey cocktail?
We're gonna call it a whiskey cocktail. I'm gonna do it because, like I say, because that is the root of the Sazerac and the Manhattan. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
It is.
That's very good.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where you enjoy it with your nose first, just the sensory, the olfactory sensation, and then you get the taste on your tongue.
Yeah. And I started doing that with the 1888 Manhattan and Martini when they popped up in Harry Johnson's book. And that's one of the neatest things you see change over time is the 1882 book. It's almost a repeat of Jerry Thomas in some ways. But in 1888, you start to see these classic cocktail names, even though they're not the form that we think of them today. They're very much still Victorian cocktails, but they've started down that road. And he was not clear on whether you left the lemon in as a garnish or not. You do squeeze it over the top. But one thing that I just found that I prefer doing is to, since it wasn't specific, I like to squeeze it over the top and get rid of it. So you just have that subtle mingling of flavors or in aromas without even seeing where it's coming from. You're just kind of experiencing it all with your senses.
Jerry B says late to the party. Cheers, everyone. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
Let us know what you're drinking. I think that you just touched on what is one of the most interesting conundrums in living history, which is when to innovate and when not to. And when to add your own personal touch, because we are both usually we're the people that people think are very hardcore. We really, really want to get every detail right. But then you step back and you think about okay, anytime I make a recipe from a cookbook, I'm adding my own touches. I'm always oh, I like more salt, or oh, I bet this needs cheese. I'm thinking of what I cooked last night. Okay. So and at the time, especially the earlier back you go, earlier 19th century, cookbooks are notoriously vague. And I almost wonder if they were more like Pinterest boards, because they're written with the understanding that the audience knows what they are doing, but just needs some inspiration, some ideas. At least that is my interpretation.
Well, I think the key is to stick with factors that were available. And in a period in the 19th century, you couldn't expect everything to be available all the time like we do now. And so I think in the cookbooks, in the cocktail manuals, they account for variability.
Yeah.
And so while we're hung up on this garnish goes with this drink, in the Victorian period, a lot of times it's garnished with fruit and berries and seasoned.
You know what? I think that's a really good answer to that question. Obviously, we just need to get in front of 17 people online and have these conversations more often, because we never had it together. But yeah, I think that's the benefit of studying the whole period. If you just look at one recipe, you'll get obsessive about just reconstructing that, or just give up. But if you read 300 period recipes, be it food, be it cocktails, okay, wait, I think I have a feel for how they're thinking about
you
this.
You got to be feeling all the factors.
Okay, I don't have this, but you know what else I see pop up a lot is this. That's really similar. I think that's a good answer to that conundrum.
Well, and what I did here with Harry Johnson, as far as expressing lemon on it, he didn't say whether or not to leave it in. He just said to express it over the drink, and so we did it both ways. And just like a bartender would then, we decided what we wanted to do because he was not specific.
Yeah, there you go. We may not have had that exact conversation, but actually that is the conversation. People ask me, do you watch Drunk History on YouTube? And I'm always like, dude, my life is Drunk History. There's nothing against that channel. Anyways, we have more people saying things. Sir Zorgalon says, Jerry Thomas recipes for the improved whiskey cocktail really are great and opened my eyes to what Victorian mixology was about. And I might make myself an improved Holland gin cocktail.
Oh, very good.
Have we tried that?
No, we have not.
Let us know how that goes, Sir Zorgalon.
Yeah.
Jerry B says drinking a watered down vodka and lime. It's early afternoon in Cali.
Oh, hey.
Hey. Hello, West Coast. Eric Lynn, cool show. Thanks. Have a nice day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Frank McLeod was entertained by something we said. Oh, it's Heather Torrey. Heather Torrey's here. Hey, Heather. I didn't even get around just putting up a PayPal link in this, by the way, but let us please take this opportunity for a shout out to Heather Torrey, who is by far our biggest supporter.
Yes.
Or to Heather, you have no idea. It matters and it means a lot. And thank you. Heather ended up on our Christmas card list at one point. Except you never DM'd me your new address, Heather. And then Gaines Lawrence asked, what were the most popular spirits during the first half of the 19th century?
You're looking at brandies are going to be the most fashionable, starting with cognac and then down to domestically produced. And then once you get into gins and whiskeys, those are more like workarounds. And,
now, what they actually asked was popular.
Well,
So that's, I mean, there's two ways of looking at that. Like what's most sought after popular or what is most consumed.
Well, let me say this. When in 1843, A Christmas Carol came out by Charles Dickens, and when he said that Bob Cratchit made a gin punch, that was a signal that he was broke and that he was making do with what he had. So whiskey had not come into its own as far as a popular, fashionable drink. That doesn't mean it wasn't being drank a lot. It certainly was. That was a very American thing. But brandies are still going to be your more popular, more fashionable. You're going to present that if you can. Alan Bishop told me, and
we need a shirt that says Alan Bishop told me.
Yeah, that there were probably times in the 19th century where people would have referred to whiskey as brandy, just to make it seem more fashionable. The other thing about that is, especially the earlier 19th century, you didn't necessarily separate fruit and grain when you were distilling. You could actually mash fruit and grain together.
That always blows my mind. Like, I know you've said that to me at least 3 times, and every single time I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's on the bucket list of things to do once we get back to doing historic distilling.
So what was the difference? You always talk about this, and this is technically pre-Victorian, but at Locust Grove about like what William Prawn was buying versus what was being produced in his distillery.
So anybody who's been with us for a while knows I used to be the program director at Locust Grove. I was part of the small farm distillery project there, which was one of the neatest things I ever got to do. And so it was very thin evidence that we had to go on, which was expected because the farm was not the bread and butter of the money of the farm. It was his businesses, it was his surveying and all that. So it was not a surprise to find out there was a distillery there because we knew he had grain fields, we knew he had a mill, and we knew he had fruit orchards. And so necessarily he was likely producing whiskey and brandy like everybody else was who produced those things to preserve the crops. And nobody missed it, it felt good too. But when I was going through his account books, I noticed that during the same period that his farm was producing whiskey and brandy, he was purchasing rum and Madeira because that's what he preferred. He had been in the British Army and then in the American Army. So rum was what he was used to, what he preferred to drink, even though that's not what his farm was producing. So how much of the produce of his distillery made it to his table, we don't know, but we know that he did buy the beverages that he preferred over what he was producing.
So rations in the Army, was that usually rum or whiskey?
There's rum in the British Army, early on in the American Army, and then by 1812 was switching to whiskey. It's almost a patriotic statement. Yeah.
Okay. And I think I remember from one of the Townsend videos that for like at Mount Vernon for the enslaved workers there, part of their ration was, I think, whiskey.
And very likely at Locust Grove too. We just don't have records.
So when you're the slower down the social ladder you go, I guess is whiskey. It's not as posh, but it is being drunk by a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very American thing.
Yeah. We have got some great questions coming in. Let's see. Heather says, hi, happy when you can support. Thank you so much, Heather. Sir Zargon, another fantastic question. What would you say is the #1 lesson modern bartenders could learn from their Victorian predecessors? I am going to answer this as the dilettante because I'm not really the Victorian bartender. I ride shotgun. I will give you the sort of layman's answer. And I think that probably some modern bartenders do know this, but a lesson that generally modern mixology could learn. This can be an ingredient. Absinthe, it was so cool to us all when absinthe came back in as being legal that everybody is obsessed with the fountain. I won't try to pull it out from back there. Everybody's all about the absinthe fountain. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. I'm not trashing the absinthe fountain at all. But absinthe can be an ingredient, like in the beverage that we just had. Early versions of the martini included absinthe. Now, I still love a classic martini, but I've actually started sometimes because I was inspired by the Victorian bar ideas. So here's a specific example. I've started sometimes including an absinthe rinse in a more classic style martini. It is so good. So a lot of these things that to us now are very exotic that we want to make the main event, they can be the main event, absolutely. But they can also be ingredients. They're more versatile than people realize. And that's something that I've really come to appreciate from this whole journey. So Now let the barman actually give you a more probably nuanced answer.
I think one of the important things is digging into the roots of the spirit and where they came from, because World War I and II and Prohibition brutalized our agriculture, the spirit landscape, and all that. Technology has dumbed spirits down just like it has everything else, not in all cases. But when you get into pot distilled versus column distilled whiskey, when you get into both, I know Spirits of French Lick and Kentucky Artisan Distillery are two really great ones that have brought oats back into bourbon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good.
Makes a huge difference.
Bourbon.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Some of these things that have been forgotten, you need to dig back into those roots. And as much as we think we have variety now, I think it's superficial compared to what they had back then, and the depth of understanding and the craftsmanship that they had. It's great that chemists and biologists and things like that are becoming distillers, but it doesn't substitute for craftsmanship and artistry. The science does not substitute for craftsmanship and artistry.
I think that's another aha that I've had just in the last 10 years is just what variety existed pre-prohibition. For beer, for brandy. There was a while back now, there was actually very good. Remember, we went to that exhibit at the Fraser Museum, and it's just so many things have made me like, oh my gosh, we lost so much. Yeah. Louisville used to be a big beer city.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Kentucky is famous for bourbon now, and that's great. We love bourbon, but we used to be a beer city pre-prohibition as well. We had so many, what I guess today would be called small craft breweries. They weren't called that then. And it's so sad that you just, even from like an economic level, you used to have so many more small producers as a part of the landscape.
Well, and that happened too in the mid 20th century. The taste started getting insipid. You can take that as derogatory or not, but that's where light beer came from. It's like, yes, Stroh's goes back to the early 20th century. What you're drinking now is not the Stroh's they were drinking in 1910. Light whiskey. The common Jameson Irish whiskey. Yes, Jameson has been around for a very long time. The Jameson you're getting in the store has been around since the mid 20th century. Things like that. The mid 20th century dumbed down.
Yeah. So many things. Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the things that we've discovered with Victorian mixology is that there's a richness to it. There's a full bodiedness to it that doesn't really exist in modern cocktails.
Yeah, there is. I'm going to get through.
Yeah, let's go to some more questions.
Having a good time with y'all for almost an hour now.
Oh gosh, yeah. What else we got?
This is going great. Yeah. Oh my God. We didn't know if anyone would show up, by the way, you all. We're like, I hope someone's here. And this is fantastic. Let's see. I'll give comments first and then questions. I think based on what you were saying about William Cron, Heather says, sell what you grow to afford what you want. I think that's a pretty good. Yeah.
In his case, he was surveying land. And so the farm was kind of sidelined.
That's true. Davina Duckworth, fantastic username, says, hey, and Jameson's among a number of Irish whiskey brands that are manufactured by a multinational company. Often the case now. Yeah. Side note, but since, we're here doing the things that we do in the clothes that we're in, Singer is the same way now. Just if anybody doesn't know that, a vintage Singer before the 1970s will go until the world ends. But anything you buy now, you go out there. I know what you're thinking. It's my first sewing machine. I need a Singer. It's not a Singer anymore. That name has been sold so many times. Side note, but there you go. Many of them are manufactured at the same facility. You could be talking about booze or Singers. I don't even know, and you're right. But actual good questions. Let's see. Here's a good one. What impact has modern brewing had on the original flavors or tastes of early cocktails? Do you think any improvements actually happened, or are we missing out on the best part of the past? That's from Mark Niering. And Mark, if I mispronounced your name, I am sorry.
I'm going to say we're missing out on the best parts of the past. And here's the thing. If I go and get a bottle of Jim Beam now, a year from now, 3 years from now, that bottle of Jim Beam is going to taste the same. There's something to be said for that. And first of all, I love Jim Beam because...
That's not a criticism.
No, because whenever I go out of town, whenever I have to fly out somewhere, it's like I think I'm going to immerse in the local culture and all that. And what I really want is a glass of bourbon once I get there. I want to taste it home because nowhere's as good as Kentucky, honestly. But sorry. but it's always Jim Beam is what's there. What I'm saying is you get consistency over years. You didn't have that in the 19th century. And that could be seen as a weakness, but you're also missing a lot of the nuance that comes with that. It's like whiskey was just like fine wine, as far as, a different vintage is going to be a different taste and all that. And so really, I think that we have got, what's the word for that? Homogenized?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's pretty neat that we can have the same flavor every time we pick up a bottle, but we are missing out on a lot of the experience that I think has also been removed from the eating with the seasons and things like that, something special because it's in season and you can get it at that point. So I would say, yes, we have missed out on that. We're also missing out on the artistry, which luckily, some of these small distilleries are bringing some of that back, but even the smallest.
We keep bringing up French Lick for a reason, and the Snitching Lady out in Fairplay. You're going to get so much more of this with people like the Snitch and Alan at French Lick, where they're more into exploring what nature wants to do this year than they are obsessed with replicating something.
But even those are industrial compared to what the farm distilleries were.
That's true.
In the early 19th century. Like I say, Locust Grove had a 66-gallon still.
I was going to say, by the way, for the record, if anyone's wondering, there was an Evan Williams. There is no continuous line.
We love this stuff.
This is what we drink. Now, for the record, to say we're not trashing it, of an evening, if you come in, what are they drinking when they're tired? They came home from work. They don't have time to think. Evan and soda.
Yeah.
Now, for all of that, what it is very interesting is for all of the ways that we want to tame nature, we're obsessed with standardization. I swear, and we're not the only ones who've said it, our friend Andrea Merriweather said this as well. It does vary from bottle to bottle based on who blended it.
I don't know who they are, but I can tell the difference between who blended it.
So on the other hand, you can try to standardize as much as you can. Mm-hmm. You can be all scientific about it, but man, I swear a little artistry does get in there.
So that's what I would say. I would say we've lost because we've lost variety in a way that we don't even conceive of today. We've gotten so used to, I always get the same thing off the shelf, that we've lost the character that goes with, everything that goes into year to year, the agriculture that happens that year, the weather that happens that year. When I got to train at Mount Vernon with Steve Bayshore at the distillery out there, I was only there for 3 days. We were doing the same thing every day, but the distillery smelled different every day. We could talk about all we wanted about why that might be, but we never knew. It was just different because of the weather and all the factors that go into that. So
we got fighting words about saying bourbon started in Western Pennsylvania and the Whiskey Rebellion sent people to Kentucky. I will admit I don't know that.
Well, what is the argument for bourbon starting there versus rye whiskey, which is also a wonderful thing? In my understanding, rye is more of a Pennsylvania.
And also, what do you mean by bourbon? Because it was
and bourbon was not codified in the law until 1964. So certainly there are things that could have happened in Pennsylvania you could have called bourbon.
Yeah.
But Pennsylvania rye is its own magical thing. Pennsylvania and Maryland have their own distinct, very special distilling culture that's only just now being brought back. Again, with the mid-20th century, after Prohibition and all that, so much got lost. There's some people really made a concerted effort to bring the Pennsylvania and the Maryland styles of whiskey back.
Who was it you knew out
there? Overton.
Yeah, Overton.
West Overton. Yeah, they've got a historic distillery out there, and they're doing some neat stuff.
Yeah.
They're really trying to bring the 19th century Pennsylvania style back, which is really needed.
Yeah.
Because when you read about rye whiskey, it's not the version of Old Overholt you get in the store today.
No, and that's another good example of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, Pennsylvania and Maryland have very proud whiskey distilling histories.
Davina pointed out something that's also Dillon's in Niagara in Ontario for a independent distillery. We'll have to look into that. Yeah, it's always great discovering some new independent little distillery. It's awesome. Yeah. We should probably stop at the hour.
Okay.
Or go a little over, but I don't want to let us stop though before we skirted over this earlier. I think the question you get the most is, do you dress like that every day?
Yes. Yeah. I don't mean to bore anybody with that, but
You're not boring everybody. People help me. Okay. FYI, I spend a lot of my time trying to convince my husband that he should be like posting more on Instagram about all the clothes he makes. And he like won't do it because, it's just no one cares and not until I have it perfect. Help me out here, people. I think you're fascinating, baby.
No, I do dress Victorian every day. It's not always a full suit. And the interesting experiment is with what? Oh, that's true.
Thank you, people.
The interesting thing about the experiment, and it's not perfectly how it would have been in the 19th century because it's not the same people doing it, but you change the way you relate to your clothes by making them all. And like right now, I'm running into a situation where my shirts are disintegrating. I've been working on a new pattern because my goal is actually to produce and sell the best Victorian shirts you can get.
Oh, I think that's the first time you've said that out loud.
I think so.
Like,
that's one thing I've wanted to do.
Y'all heard it first.
Yeah, not the cheap Walmart version. It's like I want to do the best Victorian shirts you can get. And so I've been running through prototypes of that. And it's got to get done right now because my shoulders are starting to fall out.
I'm going to just ask him to review this chat later. Thank you, people.
But it's just the way I'm comfortable, and nobody's going to arrest me for it. And some people think it's neat. Some people are hostile about it. But it just kind of is what it is. And I don't want to dress the way they're dressing. And so if they don't want to dress the way I'm dressing, I don't really care.
I think you look darn dishy.
Well, thank you.
Oh my gosh, no, seriously. Like, I'm always like, you don't realize how like incredible you look and how awesome you are.
I should have brought the pattern out with me, but
thank you, Davina.
Oh,
that's what I am always saying.
The Past Patterns is one of the best commercial pattern companies out there. Their stuff is both based on meticulous research and usable and well-sized. And their mid-19th century summer trouser pattern is one of the best basic trouser patterns out there. I've been playing a lot with drafting my own stuff, which is a lot of fun.
You've really broken through.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I've learned to do draping on a dress form or another body, but you have seriously learned the drafting, and I am beyond blown away by you. I mean, I really am.
Oh, thank you.
He's figured out all these old tailoring manuals. He's figuring it out, and like just. I'm a teacher for a living, right? So the growth mindset even that you've had about this, these little like edu speak is incredible.
Well, Steve Abel, if he's still out there, he's been a big support, big help on that. I was doing a draft the other day and I texted him. I was like, Steve, in this particular manual, do you find the seam allowance is not added in? He's like, I don't think so, but I added it anyway because you can always take it back out. It's like, good point.
Thank God for Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Oh, see, look, everybody thinks you're amazing.
Oh.
You're awesome. Yeah, no. So people tend to ask us this. I don't dress Victorian every day, though I do. For me, I've realized I love vintage inspired clothes, and I think what I love is that new look 1950s style that is actually in many ways a Victorian recycling for the more modern world. So I'm not going to do this. Like I teach history at community college. Well, okay, occasionally I do dress up like this for my students. I do find excuses to be that teacher in historic clothing sometimes. But I will tell you, at some point I realized what I'm really comfortable in day to day is a fit and flare, either explicitly 50s, 60s vintage or inspired by that. And I did realize at some point, I'm like, well, wait a minute, the whole new look and all that really in some ways, because fashion is always recycling, right? The story of fashion is everything old is new again. In many ways, that was a Victorian recycling. And that's something I can wear day to day and, have an easier time getting into and wearing that I am really comfortable in. So no, I don't, but I think I have my sort of Victorian motifs with me. I mean, this is all my hair. I love having long hair. I do kind of always have that classic sort of vibe. That's what just feels right for me. Okay, everybody thinks you're awesome.
Oh, once you try Victorian pants, you're never going to want to go back.
I have heard so many men that say that. I can't speak to it, obviously, but...
They don't squeeze you anywhere. They hang in a nice spot.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes. Well, and I got very into draping when we were doing Regency clothing, a lot of Regency or Federal era stuff. And when I started doing that time period, we were talking the other day about like things people told you could or couldn't do. And I think from other people who'd run into difficulties with it, I was told by other fuller figured women that we couldn't look good in federal clothing. And I get why, because it takes a lot of work on the body. And so when you just get a pattern, especially if it's like a Butterick costume pattern for a federal piece of clothing, you might just be like, oh, this looks like a sack on me. I gotcha. Okay, I'm out. Bye. But learning the actual techniques from people like Burnley and Trowbridge, who also have a YouTube channel, federal clothing was just like unlocked for me. I'm like, no, it's as long as it's made for your body, it works really well. And things we discovered, I have this one really slopey shoulder, and my bust is bigger on the same side, just to be really weird. He got really good at just fitting all that stuff on me, because you have to fit it on the body and then it looks really good. So he's also helped me a lot with my stuff.
I don't care whether it's drinks, clothes, whatever. If you want to do something and somebody tells you it can't be done, that either means they're repeating what somebody else said or they tried and failed. That does not mean you're going to try and fail. Just dig in and do it if you want to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to hold people here forever, but we've still got 21 people in here.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Do people have other questions?
Otherwise, we can wrap it up and thank everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, Davina, I don't know you, but I get the feeling we do a lot of the same stuff because, Victorian Barroom Fashion Show.
Okay.
Yeah, and the cost of a tailor seamstress does make it difficult these days.
You know what? I learned to make clothes because I was too broke to pay anybody else to make the things I wanted. So that's where it all started.
I'm going to make sure this one out. Jerry B says the only time you fail is when you stop trying.
Yes.
It took me so long to learn that. I mean, it really did. It took me forever.
The thing is, it's okay to take a minute, be depressed, be discouraged for a minute, but shake it off once you're done. Just come back and do it again.
Well, and I think it's worth stressing. This is supposed to be a Q&A, but I will take I'll take a Q we haven't specifically gotten and give an A, because I know a lot of the questions on Townsend's that they are often getting, either from when we've been on or when I'm lurking in the comments of their live streams, is people are always asking, how do you get into living history? And I think the best advice is, dude, don't try to do it all at once. Don't be mad if the first thing you make isn't perfect. I mean, even with mixology, to bring it back to our little niche here, I mean,
have fun with what you're doing along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And keep trying.
It's got to be enjoying the process. And of course, you're looking forward to the end result, but there's got to be an element of enjoying the process to it.
Yeah. Which with mixology, of course, we've
clothes too. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't wear the things that I made 13 years ago.
Oh my gosh! No. And also just accept that. Like you will look back and be like, "Oh, I wore what?" But I feel like even with the drinks, like there were things that we made the first few times.
Oh yeah.
That it took us a while to understand.
I don't know how many versions of the 1888 Manhattan we ran through before we realized it wasn't necessarily nasty. I mean, the first few tries I did were disgusting. And finally we got the key and figured out what it was supposed to be like.
I got talked to behind the bar. Ooh. Hello. Not yet. We'll be checking that out. It's just keep trying. Like, just don't be discouraged. I feel like that's what we most probably want to get through to people, because like we're both around 40 and it's probably taken us most of our lives to start to really internalize that. I'm always like yelling at my students, like, be more optimistic. Okay. All right. Well, should we wrap this up?
I think so. Thank you all so much for being here. This is the first time we've tried this. We might do it again in the future if people want to come.
Oh, we're doing this again.
This has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate the conversation. And
thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, it's just great to hang out with y'all, even though we're not in the same place.
Yeah. Frank says, nice to meet you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Nice to meet you too, Frank. Oh my gosh. This was just delightful, y'all. Yeah. We will never be the people who I think can commit to always doing a cocktail hour live stream at a certain time. I'm thinking this as we sit here, like, I just know us. It'll never happen.
But let us know what you think about, when this might work, when you might like to see it.
Yes, because I could see a semi-regular, ish when we make it happen. Not firm commitment. Look, this is my one firm commitment in life, y'all. It's this guy right here. But this was great.
Yeah.
Spontaneous is always best. Thank you, Frank. That makes us feel better.
Very good.
Well, we will do this again, y'all. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, look at all this. Oh my gosh, from Sweden.
Oh, wow.
No commitments. Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you, Heather.